Well, the good thing is I play quarterback, so I don't really have to be in that great of cardiovascular shape. But I'll be fine. Adam knows kind of what I've been up to, so we'll figure it out along the way.
You got to hand it to Jay Cutler. At least he's consistent. Cutler showed up to his first press conference in Miami looking, as our associate producer Dave Sancharico tweeted, like he closed down Live the night before. That's a nightclub on South Beach.
For those not hip.
Yeah, hey, welcome.
We always close down Live.
It's just another Tuesday around our place. Welcome to SI Now. It is Tuesday. It's August 8th. I am Maggie. That is Robin. Yesterday, we praised the Dolphins for making the move to sign Jay Cutler. Do you feel any differently after seeing and laying eyes on Jay Cutler?
I feel like Ron Burgundy after he dove into the bear pit. I immediately regret the decision. Look, it's not really fair, Maggie, right? Because we're talking about a guy who his face really shouldn't be judged, right? We shouldn't just go totally off of body language. And he was joking. At the same time, he does feed into that reputation that is uninspiring by going up there and going, hey, I'm not really in that good a shape. In fairness, there are glowing reports out of Dolphins camp today.
Well, I just wonder if he doesn't have to be in shape, then who does? I mean, if he doesn't have to be in cardiovascular shape, you could say, I mean, he's playing probably more snaps than anyone else on the team, right, as the quarterback. I know he doesn't have to move around on every single play, but you at least want him with a little bit of escapability or something. I think this is so funny. The one thing, though, besides, Cutler looking like he'd been out all night, the one thing that would be a little troublesome and worrisome to me is the fact that I was reading some reports out of Miami, and how it made it seem was that he felt very content in his life being retired. He was talking about how great it was to be around his kids. He was getting ready to be a broadcaster with Fox. He said his wife kind of nudged him into it. And if you don't want to play, I know $10 million is, I'm sure, impossible to turn down, but if you don't want to play and you just had a taste of the good life of retirement, this is going to be a tough season for Jay Cutler.
I think that's what people are questioning more than anything, his desire. And he didn't help those questions yesterday. If he didn't look like that from shutting down Live, perhaps he was in sparring sessions. Speaking of which, after leaving the McGregor camp, unlike he may have in sparring, Paulie Malignaggi is not holding back on Conor McGregor. He told Ariel Helwani on the MMA Hour, "This guy is one of the biggest dirtbags I've ever met in my life. Bar none."
Whoa.
I was amazed at what a dirtbag this person is. I don't care if we never speak again. My life is fine if I never see Conor McGregor again. Is McGregor-Mayweather the true definition of no publicity is bad publicity?
Without a doubt, yes. But of all the things that Conor has been called by me, by other people, dirtbag is probably like the least of his worries and the least of his troubles. This is my one thing about this criticism. And I understand Paulie Malignaggi. I think he was really embarrassed because the Conor McGregor camp posted some unflattering photos that made it look like he was getting knocked down by McGregor when in fact that wasn't the truth. But there's two sides to the story here, because Malignaggi also said that he had posted some things on Twitter that made him look a little bit better than Conor. And listen, Conor's camp is bringing in Paulie to not only spar with McGregor, but to try to build his confidence, right? So yeah, they're going to play some mind games with him. They're going to ask him to fight the day after he lands from New York City on the airplane going to Las Vegas. They're going to, try to switch the times on him. They're going to post unflattering things on social media. This is just all part of them trying to get their fighter ready. I didn't think it was such a direct blow to Paulie Malignaggi.
Well, I think Paulie Malignaggi is definitely in his feelings, as you're saying, and expressing that. But I understand it because this fight is bigger than boxing. We all get that. It's become a spectacle. But Paulie made his life in boxing. He is a reputable boxer. He was mentioned as a prospective opponent for Floyd Mayweather at various times. So to him, that's got to be extra embarrassing to look like he got knocked down by McGregor, who's never been a boxer, when he's doing them a favor. And he said he knows they posted it because only McGregor's people were allowed in the camp.
You know what's interesting, though, is that Paulie also said, I didn't want this to become this big thing. I just was really trying to help Conor by sparring with him. And that I have to look sideways at. As you said, this is much bigger than boxing. It's much bigger than UFC. It's bigger than anything. How could Malignaggi not know that this is going to be a major publicity, magnet, and that he's going to get a lot of attention from it, and that a lot of times you can't control what kind of attention you get. Just like we said, is all publicity good publicity? Not for Paulie, but for the fight. He's just a pawn in this entire thing. If they can squeeze one more dollar out of Paulie calling Conor a dirtbag, then they're totally willing to do it. Now, one real thing about this is that Paulie said that the photo that they posted was Conor pushing him to the ground. Now, this is something that's come up every now and then, which is, can Conor actually stick to just boxing in this fight, or is he going to resort to MMA moves? I asked Dana White about it when we were in Barclays Center in Brooklyn, and he said Conor will get sued if he does anything except for punch. Pushing down, though, is going to be a deduction, and that's going to be points off, so it's not going to help him. That's the one thing that caught my eye in terms of what may actually happen in the ring.
There's also the muscle memory concerns, but in my mind, either Conor McGregor is delusional or he made a deal with himself. How much money would he take for a guaranteed L? Right. So I would imagine he wouldn't sacrifice that possible purse to knock Floyd Mayweather down in a way that isn't a punch.
We have some Facebook interaction happening. Of course, we're on Facebook Live. David Rojas writes, if Conor can't beat Paulie without fighting dirty, how is he expected to beat the greatest of all time?
That's part of the point, too, right? I mean, Paulie Malignaggi doesn't want his reputation sullied here. And you talked about getting attention. I would imagine he thought the attention would be, hey, this guy helped me out. Thank you. Because not all boxers are probably willing to help out Conor McGregor, because if McGregor does well, it makes their sport look better.
I know, but then he underestimated Conor, because Conor is not in this to help anyone else but himself. And I don't think, he probably thinks, hey, maybe I'm paying you to come spar with me. That's the thank you I give you. I'm not going to publicly praise you, because that's just not Conor's way.
We talked about Jay Cutler earlier. Another controversial quarterback has decided he might want to skip a step in his career. Johnny Manziel expressed interest in being a college coach if his NFL tenure is indeed over. Maggie, he said this at the International Betting Conference in Costa Rica. Would you bet on anyone giving Johnny Football a coaching job?
No, because I like to keep my money right in my pocket. I like the shekels where they are. The fact that he made this at a betting conference, made this this prediction, or maybe that he could be a college coach, the fact he did this at a betting conference just shows you what a walking NCAA violation Johnny Manziel would be. Now, yes, would he be able to, get recruits and win the recruiting battle and, be effective on a recruiting trip? Absolutely. Could it end perhaps in the death penalty for your college athletics program? Also, yes. I mean, would you really trust Manziel with your 18 and 19-year-old young men and recruits? I mean, I think he's delusional if he thinks that a college program is going to bring him in.
Look, I'm not going to hold him to what he said here. I mean, he was in some sort of forum. He was answering off the cuff. But any college program would be out of their minds to give him a job right now. Now, I hope for his sake that he goes on to have success and gets a career where he wants to have a career. But we're too close to his most recent incidents to get to that point. I think he needs to make sure he's good, and I hope, we all hope, that he gets himself right before we can talk about anything beyond, what he's doing in his personal life.
Where has Manziel showed you at all that he understands some of the mistakes that he's made and would be a good mentor to someone else? As far as I'm concerned, it seems like he might still be out there making those mistakes. And one of the things he said also in this interview with Clay Travis, he said he turned down CFL offers, Canadian Football League offers, because he wanted to keep his NFL prospects open. Dude hasn't played since 2015. What is he possibly talking about with these offers? Delusion.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bit of an entitlement there perhaps as well.
Turning to the NBA, you didn't think we forgot about Kyrie Irving, did you? No. Talking on ESPN's The Jump, former Cavaliers general manager David Griffin praised Irving for how he has handled his trade request. Watch this.
I don't think this is youth and ignorance. This is a guy who handled this situation exactly like he was supposed to. He went to Dan Gilbert privately, told him that he thought he would be happier somewhere else. The absolute worst thing this guy could have done was pretend to be all in and sink the ship from within. Most guys don't have the courage to do what he did. So that's not youth and ignorance. That's a little bit more courage than people give him credit for.
Okay, Robin, that was the former general manager of the Cavaliers. Do you think he helped Kyrie with his explanation and version of things?
He certainly didn't hurt him. I mean, David Griffin's a very smart guy, and I think in answering that way, he's looking to have another job in the NBA, I'm sure, or as a figurehead, right? So what better way to engender support amongst the players by supporting a player? I think it looks much better on him to articulate it that way than to totally condemn Kyrie Irving.
I think one place where if I was Kyrie Irving, I would probably not feel all that great about what David Griffin said was when he said that you don't want someone inside the organization not bought in, potentially sabotaging a championship season. I mean, even the fact that he would bring that up, that it could be a possibility that Irving, if he remains on the Cavaliers, could derail a potential title in Cleveland, that is something where, listen, Griffin knows Kyrie Irving. That is something that was not attached to his name that could now start to stick. That is Kyrie Irving really that much of a malcontent? I mean, if they can't find a place for him to go where they feel like they get good value back, that they just can't have him on the team because he could just be destructive on the team. If I'm Kyrie, I don't like what that allusion was to.
Yeah, maybe David Griffin was privy to some of this before it actually exploded in the public, and therefore he realizes this is a better situation for everyone if Kyrie Irving winds up somewhere else. Tom Brady said he doesn't think it's anyone's business when asked if he suffered an undisclosed concussion last year. Well, I guess that leads to a simple question. Yeah. Is it our business?
You know, I think it is. I think this is where athletes don't understand not just their place in the sport, but their place in society. And I'm not saying that Tom Brady, this isn't even about the kids, and I can make it about the kids, but it's not. It's not even about being a role model to children. It's about being a role model to your fellow NFL brethren. Because if Tom Brady, the face of the league, feels like he cannot be truthful about concussions and about head trauma, then how could anyone else in the league feel like they could actually be truthful about their health without risk of being cut or being ostracized or what have you? I mean, the reason why a lot of this, why things have moved forward in terms of making the game safer, and I'll use air quotes, is not just the science and the NFL. It's the players themselves taking themselves out of games, appealing to their teammates, take yourself out of the game, retiring early. Things like that have really had a strong effect on moving the game into potentially a safer place. Things like this, when Brady says things like this, I think it moves it backwards.
Well, the very business of the NFL may be dependent on us knowing the business of the head injuries that players suffer. I would never say anything bad about Tom Brady or the Patriots on the field, but I increasingly question what they say or don't say more often off the field when they get a microphone.
You know, last thing about this, though, is athletes sometimes complain that we hold them to too high a standard where they have to be perfect all the time. This is a way where you can show some vulnerability, just being human, and they're not taking that opportunity.
Obviously, Brady's comments register because head trauma is such a sensitive topic in the NFL and across football. I had a chance to talk to the man who discovered CTE yesterday, Dr. Bennet Omalu. CTE in football has become a major topic of discussion this summer, and joining me now is the man who discovered the disease and the author of the new book, The Truth Doesn't Have a Side, My Alarming Discovery About the Danger of Contact Sports, Dr. Bennet Omalu. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I was immediately struck by the title of your book, The Truth Doesn't Have a Side, because I'm sure, and as you illustrate in it, you've been attacked for being anti-football, but that was never your purpose, right?
Yes, it was never my purpose to attack football. I've never attacked football. I've never attacked the NFL. But what happened was in 2002, when I did Mike Webster's autopsy, there was an intersection of the humanity of my faith and the humanity of my science. And when I did Mike's autopsy, I did not know what I was looking for. And by serendipity, I encountered this disease, which I gave the name chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Over the centuries, we have always known that in whatever human activity, whereby the human head is exposed to repeated blows of the head, with or without a helmet, with or without concussions, there is a 100% risk exposure to permanent brain damage. Knowing what we know today, no child under the age of 18 should engage in the high-impact, high-contact collision sports. The big six are football, ice hockey, mixed martial arts, boxing, wrestling, and rugby. Why? The truth of the fact is that when a child plays these games, that child suffers brain damage, which can manifest sometimes 40 years later. When you play these games, your child is more likely to die before the age of 42, especially through violent means. Your child has about 3 to 4 times greater risk of committing suicide, of suffering a major psychiatric illness like major depression, of becoming a drug addict or abusing alcohol, of developing proclivities to violent behavior and tendencies and criminal behavior, of dropping out of college and attaining relatively low educational levels. This is outside CTE, because I think there's not so much obsession with CTE. CTE is just one disease in a broad spectrum of diseases that are caused by brain damage from trauma to the brain.
A couple follow-ups to that. I mean, obviously, you just mentioned CTE has, covered all of it, and there is more to it than that. I also think that the word concussion, now, obviously, you were the subject of the movie, has become such a big buzzword. Do you think people sort of lose sight of the fact that it's not always the concussive blows that cause the damage?
Yes, a concussion actually is a disease by itself. It's part of the traumatic encephalopathy syndromes. People will be shocked by what I would say, and this is why people should buy Truth Doesn't Have a Side. Concussions do not cause CTE. What causes CTE? Blows to the head. Repeated blows to the head. Because whenever you have a blow to your head, your brain floats like a balloon inside your skull. Your brain moves around violently. You may not have symptoms, but there is injury on the cellular level, the so-called subconcussive injuries. So over time, the brain does not have a reasonable capacity to regenerate and heal itself. So these injuries are cumulative. We don't know the threshold yet for each and every individual, because some individuals, just one major blow to the head causes permanent incapacitation. Once your brain resets itself, even if you stop playing, it's too late. As a collective society, whenever we identify a potential risk factor, what do? We protect the children from that factor. We did that with cigarette smoking. We did that with alcohol. Now, we wouldn't let a child smoke a stick of cigarette, but we would put on a helmet on that child's brain, on that child's head, ask him to go to a field and suffer blows to the head and concussions. Which is more dangerous, a stick of cigarette or a concussion of the brain? These are questions each and every parent must answer.
Now, you talked about appealing to humanity, and there's an interesting quotation in the book. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it basically says, how can fans sort of idolize or worship these players or be such fans of these players, but be okay with the damage and the toll that is being done to the same people? What do you think the answer to that question is?
The answer to that question is what I call conformational intelligence in the book. And conformational intelligence actually is a phenomenon whereby you develop an irrational cast of the mind that is oblivious of objective evidence. A cast of the mind that is determined by expectations, traditions, cultures, and norms of society without you even being aware of it. And when objective evidence is presented to you to dispute the cast of your mind, you become emotional and tribal.
Yeah, I find myself dealing with the struggle internally, right? Knowing what I know now, is this something I should continue to support? But there are, of course, the ardent people on the other side of it. Do you think that football is sustainable long-term in its current form?
I believe if children continue to play, it's not going to be sustainable. The courts will decide that. It wouldn't be sustainable if children continue to play. I believe high-impact, high-contact collision sports should be played by adults only, above 18, because that is when your brain becomes fully developed. So knowing what we know now, you have a son or a child. I have a son who's 7 years old. Knowing what I know now, his name is Mark. Mark likes to use big words. Smart kid. So would I, as a parent, it would be my responsibility as a Christian to preserve his life, to give him the circumstances and environment for his intellectual development. I wouldn't take that child and subject him to some activity that has the potential to rob him of his intelligence.
And as more and more people get that way, there's less and less chance the sport remains the same. Dr. Bennet Omalu, author of The Truth Doesn't Have a Side, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bless you.
Sports Illustrated has unveiled its preseason rankings of the top 25 college football teams. No surprise, Alabama's number 1. But did your school make the list? Let's count down, starting at number 25 with Texas A&M. Staying in the Lone Star State, number 23 Texas hopes to finish a season ranked for the first time since 2012. Florida sits at 18. The Gators won the SEC East last year, but were again no match for the Crimson Tide. Number 14 Louisville boasts reigning Heisman winner Lamar Jackson, but do they have enough on the defensive side of the ball to compete in the ACC? Number 9 Washington made the college football playoff last year, but they lost 4 players picked in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft. Defending national champion Clemson comes in at number 7, but who will replace QB Deshaun Watson? Kelly Bryant? At the 5th position, you have USC, who's counting on redshirt sophomore quarterback Sam Darnold to keep rising. But the real Trojan to watch is junior running back Ronald Jones, who racked up 1,082 yards and 12 touchdowns while splitting carries last season. At 4, Oklahoma State. The Cowboys will rely on sophomore running back Justice Hill to run wild despite their air raid offense. Expect big gains from the smaller back, who had 30-plus yard plays in each of his last 4 games. 3 is Ohio State. The Buckeyes sent a ton of players to the NFL, but they've reloaded, especially in the secondary. Expect junior cornerback Denzel Ward to pick up where the pros left off. Florida State is the runner-up. The Seminoles need to cut down on sacks allowed if they want to return to the playoff. And center Alec Eberle is just the man to anchor the line. Up to 300 pounds from 285 last season, look for Eberle to keep quarterback DeAndre Francois upright. At number 1, who else but Bama? The Crimson Tide have a stable of skill position players, led by star quarterback Jalen Hurts. After last season's heartbreak against Clemson, Nick Saban has another strong shot at tying Bear Bryant's championship record.
Alabama again. Maggie,
Yeah.
my question to you,
Yeah.
is Alabama the least interesting dynasty in sports?
Okay, I feel like every dynasty has to be a little bit interesting, right? You know, who's on the short list here of boring dynasties, quote unquote? It'd be like the Spurs, it'd be like UConn women's hoops, you know, the ones that just aren't that flashy. I feel like the why Alabama is, I guess, uninteresting or just boring is about Nick Saban and just the complete and utter joylessness that he seems to get out of winning. It's like they enjoy the national championship for about 15 seconds and then he's out back recruiting. There's no emotional connection that he's at least letting the public in on. So why would anyone else, except for the people very tightly in the state of Alabama or alumni from Alabama, why else would the rest of us want to share in their joy? Because it doesn't seem like there's any joy to be had.
They haven't really had too many exciting skill position players either. I mean, their style works, there's no question. Defense, a bit of a cloud of dust mentality.
Julio
on
Jones,
offense.
Mark Cooper,
Yeah, those guys were great. I mean,
Yeah.
especially
Mark
Jones.
Ingram, yeah.
But when you mention Nick Saban, college coaches are the stars in college sports because they're the ones who stay. And he's not very gregarious. He's not very charismatic. He's very indicative of the way they play. It's almost a metaphor.
It's like, it's so business-like that it's just like, ho-hum, and another one, and they're stacking up championships left and right. They could win another one this year. It's just like death and taxes at this point. Well, someone who's looking to restart his one-man dynasty as the pound-for-pound best fighter in the UFC is Jon Jones. He stopped by our studio yesterday. On July 29th, Jon Jones reemerged as a UFC champion, beating Daniel Cormier for the second time. Jones captured the light heavyweight championship also for the second time. Jon Bones Jones joins me now, brought the belt, the champ is here. What was the first thought that went through your mind when you beat Cormier for the second time?
Finally. Yeah, it was such a long road to get back to having my championship back, and it was just like, finally, man. Like, just so much went into being back in this arena. I went through a little period where I just couldn't do anything right, and I, obviously realized that I was ruining a wonderful career. Got my head out of my butt, and I knew that winning the fight would be a huge step in the direction that I'm trying to head, which is getting the respect back. and amongst my peers and fans and whatnot. So it was redemption, 1,000%. That's what it was.
Do you feel like you got the respect? Now it's been a couple of days. Is it instantly back for you?
Yeah, you know, the support has been tremendous. I had every position, every kind of right to just be a real jerk in that moment. And, you know, the guy's on national TV crying in front of millions of people. And I handled it with grace and tried to help him out, even though he's one of my biggest rivals. And I think people really respected that. So I'm super grateful to have loyal fans and just such a strong support base. You
said, this is a quote from you, "It's a freeing feeling when so many people see you as a piece of bleep." Why is that? Yeah.
Piece of bleep. No, I'm joking. Why is that? You know, it's just been a really freeing feeling to be imperfect. A lot of times people put athletes or TV personalities or whatever on this pedestal, and they expect us to almost not be human in a way. They expect so much out of us, you know, be my entertainer. But I also want you to be a role model for my kids, and I want you to, you know, be the athlete I want you to be. And people don't realize that at the end of the day, we're human beings. And you know, losing respect amongst so many people, it allowed me to stop caring, to learn how to not care about other people's expectations and being everything that everybody else wants you to be. And it allowed me to just to start at ground zero and just kind of work myself back up into the person that I want to be.
How did that factor into the fight? So you mentioned that you felt like you handled that with grace, him crying, basically said, I can't beat him. What's your relationship like now?
So I haven't spoken to him since the fight. I would imagine deep down he doesn't like me still. I mean, this fight meant everything to him. It's his life work, and the fans are so brutal. They put his whole athletic career on this one fight. It's like, dude, you never really were, because you couldn't beat the #1 guy. And so I know it has to be hard for him to be listening to kind of the fans, and there's been so many memes that I've been seeing on the internet of him crying and stuff like that. So I'm sure he has to have some type of sore feelings when it comes to me. But I would love to be at a place with him where we can respect each other, work together. You know, I can show up to his charity events in the future. Same he could do for me. You know, I would love to have that open, you know, communication with him, because we've been a part of each other's lives for 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, he's been the only thing I've talked about for 2 years, and vice versa. So I mean, I feel connected to him forever, and it'd be nice to be able to call him up and just check on him here and there and have respect.
You know, the UFC apologized for interviewing him after the fight because he was concussed. But what was your read on that? Was that post-fight interview, was that fair?
I think the fans deserve to see Daniel in that raw state. It is kind of unfair to Daniel, but to the fans, I'm sure they love to just be able to see the raw emotion that goes into it. It was just so real, and that's the UFC's slogan. Our slogan is that UFC, we're as real as it gets. So it was very real, and I'm sure the fans really appreciate it. I could see how if you're in Daniel's camp, you hate that moment, but to the fans, you know, I think it was just such a real, raw moment, and most people are grateful to see it.
You challenged Brock Lesnar after the fight. What's it going to take for that to happen?
Before he could ever get back into the sport, he'll have to finish his suspension and rejoin our drug testing pool. So he has 6 more months of that he owes before he's able to compete again. So the Brock Lesnar fight is a very realistic thing. You know, just the sooner he gets back into the drug testing pool, the faster we can get this fight underway.
I mean, what about Stipe Miocic? I mean, is it a challenge that you want to take on personally to try to win in 2 different weight classes?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to be the heavyweight champion of the world. Right now, Stipe he's doing a tremendous job. He's looking extremely impressive. I've actually never really studied him as an opponent, so I kind of naturally shy away from the fight, but I do that with everybody until I really study them and realize where I can beat them. But with a guy like Brock Lesnar, it's just such a win-win situation where fighting a guy like Stipe is relatively unknown to the general public. I mean, only hardcore MMA fans know who he is. Where Brock Lesnar, I mean, that will get everybody excited, which ultimately generates some serious numbers for myself in the UFC.
If you fought Brock Lesnar, this would be reach so much further than just a UFC audience.
Real.
With what Conor's now doing against Floyd, I mean, has it changed what it means to be a successful MMA fighter?
Absolutely.
Is it no longer just good enough to be the champion of your weight class?
Right, absolutely. I think for some athletes, some people are complacent and well, not complacent. Some people are satisfied with just being in the UFC. I've always been a guy who wants to be a winner in the UFC and be a champion of the UFC. But yeah, Conor McGregor has definitely shown us that, you could be the champion of the UFC, or you could be a champion of 2 weight classes, or you can break out and have these mega fights that don't even really make sense, but, just doing what the fans want to see. What I'm learning from Conor is if you do what the fans want to see, the money's going to come. So for me, having fights where I fight this guy who's super respectful and he doesn't say anything controversial, or he doesn't build up this fight, it's like, I'm not really interested in that anymore after watching Conor McGregor blow up. Now I'm interested in making those brash, controversial statements.
Do you have to become a character though?
A little bit. I mean, that's kind of what it takes, and that's the main reason why I called out Brock Lesnar, because it's taboo. It's a circus show, but I think it's going to make big numbers.
You've admitted to me before that your troubles in the past, those 2 difficult years, you said you went Hollywood, you kind of just lost yourself. Now you've gotten back into the good graces of the public after this win. Can you already feel the temptations coming back, even in this short amount of time?
So it's only been a week since I got the World Championship back, and I do see possible wrong avenues presenting themselves. I went out not too long ago, and everyone in the bar wanted to buy me a drink. Where, for a while, I was used to kind of being the successful guy or whatever in the group and buying everybody shots, being that guy. And now it's been a complete 180 where everybody's trying to buy me shots now. Everyone wants to buy me drinks and hang out with me. Even on my cell phone, I have about 500 text messages that I haven't been able to reply to yet. Phone's constantly going off as it is right now, but I don't really feel like I'm at any risk of going down the avenues that I went down before, because I realize the level of destruction that can be caused by getting caught up in that lifestyle.
Do you feel like maybe deep down, maybe it's a little closer to the surface, is there a self-destruct mode that's there? Is that a fair question to ask? Is there something there?
Not in me anymore. There was a moment in my career, like when I was younger. I almost did accept doing self-destructing things, but somewhere in my head I was doing it to challenge myself, to see what type of things I could fight through, what type of adversity I could fight through. I almost felt like I had to have cards stacked against me in order to really perform at a high level. So I would drink before fights, and I would just do stupid stuff before fights to see how much I really got. I became a millionaire at age 23, and it can do something to a person who was never trained to jump into that level of life. I used to do things to make myself feel like cards were stacked against me, and now I've really gotten to a space in my life where I dare to be great, and I dare to put my true best self out. Because there's something that's can be really defeating when you do all the right things and you come up short. And so I used partying and things as a crutch. Now I'm daring to put my true best out there and to accept defeat or victory. And thus far, putting my true self out there has given me nothing but victory.
I was in Barcelona for the Dream Team, and one night, I don't play poker, I don't play cards. There was Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Charles Barkley, and me in one room for 8 hours, and they were playing cards. I wish I could have had a camera in there. That was the funniest SH, you know what the rest is, I've ever heard in my life. For 8 hours, these guys were just going at it, talking about your mother this, your father this, and they're throwing down the cards on the table. Think about this, Jordan, Barkley, and Magic. I was with them, and just the 4 of us for 8 hours, and they had a game the next morning.
That was part of my conversation with Spike Lee from 2013, but I don't look a day older. Isn't that crazy? Talking about his experience at the Olympics in Barcelona 25 years ago today. Thank you. The Dream Team won gold. Robin, the influence the Dream Team had on international basketball is obviously, it's incalculable. Let's make this conversation something very current. How would this Dream Team, the Dream Team in '92, stack up against the most recent iteration of the Golden State Warriors?
I don't know why you're making me do this, Maggie. On the 25th anniversary, no less. Look, the Dream Team is probably the greatest team ever assembled when it comes to star power and when it comes to influence, as you mentioned, the international game. But that doesn't mean they're the best team ever. I'm a believer in evolution. Both human evolution in the sense where 25 years of athletic achievement is going to allow the guys out on the court to simply be better, and then the evolution of the game as well, where the three-point shot has exploded. It is different. I looked up the numbers earlier today. The Warriors of this year shot about 3 times as many threes as the '92 Bulls did at a higher efficiency. I also looked at some of the shooting of the Dream Team members, and those guys really weren't a threat beyond the rim, a lot of them, so they were self-checks on the outside shot, meaning the analytics-driven teams would know how to guard that. So unfortunately for the Dream Team, I do think they would lose to the Warriors, and I don't mean that as a slight.
Okay, one game, international rules. I don't know how you could be that certain that the Warriors would win because, okay, guard play, that's one thing. The shooting is unbelievable. But the Dream Team had 2 of the best perimeter defenders, maybe of all time, in Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. So that would have been very difficult for Klay and Steph to deal with. At the forward position, Dream Team with the clear advantage. I mean, there's no way. Kevin Durant guarding David Robinson? I'll take David Robinson. Draymond Green guarding Charles Barkley? I think I'm going with Barkley there. Plus, I mean, the depth. And, like, this is no disrespect to the Warriors. JaVale McGee, Zaza Pachulia, Matt Barnes, David West, McCaw. These guys literally couldn't get on the floor, and I'm being nice to Andre Iguodala and Sean Livingston by not including them on that list. The depth, the forward position, the defense, the switchability that the Dream Team would have because of their defensive ability, especially at the guard positions. I just don't know how you could be so certain that the Warriors would come up with a victory. I'm going Dream Team on this.
Well, as far as being equipped to guard the Warriors, for a team of their era, the Dream Team would have been it. You mentioned Pippen and Jordan, but again, they were of that era. And in that era, they didn't have to deal with 7-footers who were pulling up from 30-plus feet, and they didn't have to deal with somebody like Steph Curry who was doing the same thing off the dribble. Yeah. Of course, everyone on the Dream Team is retired. A football great, Vince Wilfork, retired in a unique way yesterday.
No more cleats. I'm moving on to smoked meats, fellas. Peace out. I'm out of here. Later.
Maggie, who
the
would your
wiggle is what gets me every time. I can't keep a straight face.
Who would your retirement be sponsored by?
Okay, well, I have thought about this a little bit. I love food, maybe not as much as Vince Wilfork, but I'll put myself in that category. I love food. I especially love pizza, a lot of other things. I'm thinking Seamless. Seamless, the delivery service, should be sponsoring my retirement. Oh, and I'm eating the Snacks Harrison burger right in the middle.
There you go.
Who would sponsor yours?
I think mine would be Google, because I like being busy, and I'd be spending a lot of time on Google, Googling myself, Googling what I should be doing with myself. So therefore, that is who would sponsor my retirement.
Siri, what should Robin do today? I don't know. We're shooting an NFL segment with Albert Breer in about an hour, but that's going to do it for us today. Seamless, Google, 2 good options there. Thanks so much for watching. Of course, we're back tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, with a whole new host of topics and conversation. But until then, you can follow all the latest news and headlines on SI.com. Follow us on Twitter at SI Now Live. We'll be posting snippets from our interviews. Robin's with Dr. Bennet Omalu, mine with Jon Jones. So keep it locked. Check us out. See you tomorrow.
We're far from retired.